Economic mobility isn't just about family, it's about community connections.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Rubrik. When cyber attacks put businesses at risk, Rubrik provides the power to bounce back fast. More at Rubrik.com. And by C3 Generative AI. Verified, traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai.
I'm David Brancaccio. Who you know matters a lot. That is true for kids as well. A new study from researchers at Harvard's Opportunity Insights and the U.S. Census Bureau finds that children have a better chance at moving up the economic ladder if most of the adults with whom they interact are employed, not just in the household, but beyond. Marketplace's Samantha Fields reports.
We've long known that where you grow up has a huge influence on your life, economically and otherwise. Turns out who you're around does too.
If you're growing up in a community where parents of your own race and class group are working at lower rates, that seems to have an adverse impact on your outcomes in adulthood.
Benny Goldman is an assistant professor at Cornell who worked on the study. And he says on the flip side,
children who move young to areas where folks in their own social community tend to be working at high rates tend to do better as adults.
If most of your friends and classmates' parents are employed, that makes a big difference.
It kind of goes against our sense of individual autonomy. Like if I work hard and do the right things, I'm going to do well.
Stephen Brown is with the Aspen Institute's Financial Security Program.
It's not just all about you and your family. It's about neighborhoods, it's about networks.
And it's about class. Raj Chetty, a professor at Harvard and one of the researchers, says that race is less important than it once was to kids' prospects for upward mobility. But
while race is becoming less important, class is becoming more important in America. There's a bigger and bigger divergence if you grow up in a poor family versus a rich family.
Or in a poor community versus a rich one. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
NASDAQ futures are up 0.9%. S&P futures up 0.8%. Dow futures up 0.5%. The Federal Reserve's preferred reading on inflation, it's an index of personal consumption, came in today in line with expectations, up 0.1% May to June, with prices up 2.6% in a year using the core rate markets follow closely. That's the same as the reading a month earlier. The Federal Reserve meets next week on interest rates, but might not lower them until September.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. Schwab knows that investors want control of their financial future. That's why when it comes to wealth management, Schwab is dedicated to giving investors more choices. More at Schwab.com. And by Amazon Business, focused on offering smart business buying solutions, leading time to focus on growth. More at AmazonBusiness.com. And by Bitwarden Password Manager, designed to offer secure password management at this summer's popular events and festivals from any seat, section, or sideline. Available at Bitwarden.com.
A new president of the United States will come in just over 25 weeks from today. Even though he's bowed out of the race, Joe Biden said this during his address from the Oval Office the other night.
For the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy. I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose.
On the economic side of that, let's turn to Lindsay Owens. She's executive director of the progressive economic think tank Groundwork Collaborative. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
President Biden has gotten the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure law, and a lot more going. Is there much that can be done in, well, it's actually less than 6 months left before a new president takes the chair?
There's actually an incredible amount the Biden administration can do in these final 6 months to give consumers some continued relief. Things like finishing the junk fees rule to save consumers billions in unexpected fees that are tacked on at the end of online transactions, or finalizing the rules to get medical debt off credit reports. So a cancer diagnosis doesn't also mean you can never become a homeowner.
Now, a big piece of legislation had the name Inflation Reduction Act, but it's full of many, many long-term projects, not the least of which is mitigating climate change and girding us for the effects of climate change. Something like the Inflation Reduction Act is not at this stage set it and forget it. The wheels are turning and there's already momentum.
It's not just about passing the legislation. The agencies promulgate rules, and there's a critical effort around ensuring that there's an active defense if folks in future administrations or future Congresses try to undercut some of the progress that's been made in the Inflation Reduction Act. And also teeing up important policy fights that are slated for next year, foremost among them the upcoming expiration of key provisions in President Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which are slated to expire next year.
And we still have the executive branch working on enforcement for a number of provisions, but you wouldn't expect that to be finished this year. Some might not even be done for a couple years.
That's exactly right. Aggressive Biden administration enforcement actions are still winding their ways through the courts. Just last month, the Department of Justice sued the software company that is helping your landlord connect with other landlords down the street to fix rental prices. And so a company like that being put out of business is a huge win for millions of tenants who are seeing their rent prices higher than they'd like. And wins like that may take months and years to finally come to completion.
You're pretty impressed with the Biden economic record. What's your best theory for why the president's performance on the economy doesn't get higher ratings from the public?
Inflation has, of course, been a real pain point for Americans of all stripes. And inflation coming down, I think, is going to give folks a much rosier picture of the economy over the long haul. That being said, there was a serious cost of living crisis in this country well before inflation started to tick up. The biggest ticket items in this country, childcare, housing, higher education, healthcare, these items matter a lot to families, and they're the biggest items on the household balance sheet, and they're still unaffordable for many families. And so I think until policymakers are able to address some of those most pressing concerns for families, it's hard to imagine really anyone getting super high marks.
Lindsay Owens, Executive Director of the Groundwork Collaborative, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Our executive producer.
Traffic hours